In the back pages of a 1933 Improvement Era magazine, a story of incredible significance was placed. This story detailed the struggles Lorenzo Snow had in wanting to reorganize the First Presidency after the death of Wilford Woodruff in 1898, and how he retired to the temple in order to pray about the situation. The story also described, in detail, a vision or visitation of Christ to Lorenzo Snow in the Salt Lake Temple, and how Lorenzo was told to reorganize the First Presidency, quote, at once, and not wait as had been done, end quote. Previously, the leadership had always waited until they felt it was a good time to reorganize the First Presidency. However, Lorenzo Snow wanted to avoid that practice. Over the years, the account in this article has been retold in multiple Ensign articles, Institute manuals, primary manuals, Sunday school manuals, and even the Friend magazine. The only problem, though, is that it almost certainly never happened. We have no evidence to suggest that it occurred, yet the Church allowed it to be published in 1933 and still continues to use it today, despite the overwhelming likelihood that it is in fact totally manufactured. The story itself was published 35 years after the event by Lorenzo Snow, who was the son of Lorenzo Snow through his last polygamous wife, Sarah Minnie Jensen. It describes a first-hand account of Lorenzo Snow telling his granddaughter, Allie Young Pond, of the vision in the temple. Allie herself was the granddaughter of both Lorenzo Snow on her mother's side and Brigham Young on her father's side. The first-hand telling of the event in the article is a bit light on details. However, it does mention that Allie and President Snow were in the temple late one evening, and President Snow stopped to tell Allie the exact place that Christ had appeared to him. President Snow then related to Allie that Christ instructed him to reorganize the First Presidency immediately and to not wait as the previous leaders had done. The rest of the first-hand account doesn't relay much more information. However, the article itself lists several unequivocal facts in order to bolster the veracity of the first-hand experience. The first is that during a June 1919 conference, Lorenzo Snow related the story, and Heber J. Grant confirmed the account. Secondly, President Anthony H. Long personally heard of the story from President Snow himself. Lastly, Elder Arthur Winter had mentioned President Snow had also communicated the story to him privately. Each of these is verifiable as much as we have records, and if any one of these corroborated the story, then that would, of course, greatly help establish the story's truthfulness. However, as we will see, each one of them falls apart rather quickly upon inspection. The meeting that Lorenzo Snow mentioned in the Improvement Era article was the annual Mutual Improvement Association, or MIA, conference. This was a precursor to the modern young men's and young women's organizations that we have today. From the minutes of the conference, we know that Lorenzo Snow passed the sacrament and spoke during a testimony meeting. In addition, this would be the first public retelling of the vision. Therefore, it would be logical to assume there would be some excitement surrounding it, especially concerning a visitation of Christ. However, no journals of the time, including Anthony W. Ivins, who was president of the MIA at the time, describe a vision having been retold. The two main newspapers of the time, the Deseret News and the Salt Lake Herald, both reported on the conference and mentioned nothing of the vision. For instance, imagine what kind of excitement it would generate today if President Nelson shared a similar vision experience. It would be chronicled far and wide. Therefore, it is very likely to conclude that no such account was related during the conference. In the article, Lorenzo Snow extensively quoted President Grant, who allegedly spoke during the 1919 MIA meeting. This would be quite difficult to do unless a written record existed, or Lorenzo Snow had an excellent memory, as the article was written almost 15 years later. We do, however, know that nothing was recorded for that date in President Grant's journal, and nothing like this experience was recorded by him at all. Lorenzo Snow was unable to provide any information for this claim or a written account for where the words of President Grant came from, since we know there were no detailed minutes kept. In 1926, which would have been 7 years after the MIA conference, President Grant received a letter from a member inquiring as to which church leaders had actually had visions of Christ. His response was very simple and matter-of-fact. He responded, quote, "I know of no instance where the Lord has appeared to an individual since his appearance to the prophet Joseph Smith." End quote. President Grant would have been in the meeting where President Snow is alleged to have shared his vision. He also was alleged to have been in the 1919 MIA conference, where he extensively spoke about the vision and confirmed it. Therefore, it is highly likely that this assertion to support the vision is also manufactured. In the article, Leroy mentioned that a few days after the MIA conference, he met with Elder Lund, where Elder Lund mentioned, quote, he heard Father tell a number of times of the Savior's appearance to him, end quote. Elder Lund himself, who wrote extensively, never made any mention of such a meeting or being told of the vision. It seems likely that Leroy would have had some interactions with Elder Lund. However, the extent of these interactions is certainly in question. However, it does seem likely that if someone heard of something a number of times, that there would be some indication in their private correspondence or public statements to the effect. Therefore, it is highly likely that this assertion is also manufactured. This account is sadly quite similar to the previous one. The article mentions Lorenzo Snow had an interaction with Arthur Winter at a sacrament service in the area where Leroy, speaking about Arthur, said, quote, he told me he also had heard my father tell of the Savior's appearance to him in the temple, end quote. Arthur, who worked as secretary in the president's office, would certainly have had conversations with Leroy, who also worked in the church offices. The only known diary of Arthur is in the church history library. However, the diary ends in 1900, and there is no known diary after this point. Therefore, there is nothing currently which supports the idea that Arthur knew about the visitation or alleged vision. There is no evidence to support this assertion. Therefore, it is also highly likely that this assertion is manufactured. In 1946, due to some curiosity about the alleged vision, the Quorum of the 12 Apostles asked Elder John A. Woodsoe to investigate the truthfulness. At this time, Allie Pond had been dead for about 3 years, and so Elder Woodsoe wrote to her husband, Noah S. Pond, to get his recollection of things. Noah responded a few days later and individually corroborated each assertion of the article. In addition, he also mentioned that President Snow told the other apostles of the vision, something that we know is incorrect due to contemporary records. In individually confirming each assertion of the article, it also strongly suggests Noah was referencing the article itself while composing his response. Lastly, he asserted that his wife Allie had in fact written the account down. However, he was unable to produce a copy of that supposed written account. Due to this, Elder Widsow's investigation through Noah was an immediate dead end. Elder Widsow continued his investigation. However, every single person supposedly associated with the vision or the corroboration of the vision was dead, except the author, Lorenzo Snow. In addition, there were no written records or anything that would indicate any claim of the article or that the vision was true. Therefore, the only assumption to be made was the article and the vision itself were a fabrication. Since there is not a single shred of evidence to support any of the assertions that Lorenzo Snow made in the 1933 Improvement Era article, I think it is very safe to say that the events never happened. I am not claiming that Leroy is lying or intentionally distorting things. I do, however, think that recalling events many years in the past often leads to distortions and embellishments of the facts. This is evident today with inherently unreliable eyewitness testimony. Individuals can swear that a certain thing happened, however, the truth can be proven to be totally different. Memories can easily be distorted based on current circumstances and events. Quotes can be misremembered and then reconstructed with a different meaning. Unrelated events can be related in your mind, and then the necessary connections be made to make a person's version of events coherent. Contemporary accounts for any of the listed assertions could help establish them. However, a lack of those accounts certainly seems to suggest that this story should be ignored and treated as a faith-promoting myth.